Perfect.
Okay, Thursday, July 20th, Halliwell Review Committee meeting. First item on the agenda is, oh, this is off.
That's better. First item on the agenda this evening is roll call. Mr. Nigerian.
Here.
Mr. Simpkins.
Here.
Mr. Savini.
Here.
Mr. Mayo.
Here.
And the chair is here. Item number 2 on our agenda, public comment. You guys get your own special time to talk, so you don't need to say anything during the public comment. Seeing as though there's no one for public comment, we will continue onwards to agenda item number 3, to review and approve of the draft meeting minutes from June 15th. Everybody hasn't had a minute to look over those. Please do so.
Make a motion to accept.
All right, we have a
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item number 4, for discussion, consideration, and action. We have 2 members of the Multi-Generational Advisory Committee and the status of the Scouters Hull project. So Mrs. Tebow is here, and perfect. So the intent of wanting to meet with you folks was to kind of see where your group is. We don't want to be duplicating any efforts or anything like that. We felt that we had gotten a good amount of legwork for you guys to share with you all, based on discussions that we've had over the past 2.5 years of what's required at our community center property, and kind of wanted to see what your ideas were going to be for Scouters Hall, so we're not really duplicating efforts, or if things need to have some cross-pollination and we need to have support spaces, stuff like that. So.
Okay. Well, first of all, we've had 2 meetings.
Okay.
An organizational meeting where I was elected the chair, and Josh still is the vice chair. Wasn't looking for that, but it is what it is. So then we had another meeting, and at that organizational meeting, we recommended that everybody come back the following meeting with a wish list. What do they foresee for the Scouts? What do we foresee for seniors? And so that we had that at our last meeting. I have to say the Scouts had very detailed wish list, Roger. He and Josh, they actually met with all the Scout leaders. I mean, very detailed, measurements and everything. It was very thorough. The seniors certainly had in mind, it was more conceptual than precise because we've just begun to fight. But, things like what the seniors were looking for, a commercial kitchen, not to have the municipal court there, because that really interferes with scheduling. Things like a dance room, enough storage, and that was on the project. Storage was an issue with the Scouts as well, because Scouters is a nightmare. Built on a slab, there's no storage. Not at all. Most of us keep stuff in our cars and then just bring it on over. But as far as the seniors are concerned, we're very glad to be using it. But things like a room that would be large enough to fit maybe 150 people for a big event, but be able to be partitioned off. A pool room for pool tables, not as in swimming. Billiards, I guess is the right word. And then both the Scouts and the seniors talked about outside, like maybe pickleball, maybe bocce, cornhole, a space to have, cookouts and things like that. So, as I said, it was more conceptual for the seniors, but those are the kinds of things that we are looking forward to. And quite frankly, until last meeting, we really had nothing that we could talk about. So I don't like to have a meeting just to say we have a meeting. So we didn't have one. Waiting to hear from you and from the town administrator and the council where we are going forward with the grant process. Now, I also chair the Senior Citizen Advisory Group. So we've been doing some research on our own too, so that we could, whenever it happens that we get that check, we can hit the ground running. very nicely. We were able to get operational budgets, their scope of work, because all senior centers are not, I don't want to say created equal, they're not all the same, whether they're municipal or subcontracted. So we went there, and they have a very, very robust activity schedule. They have like 1.5 FTEs, and basically what they do is offer activities and programs, and they are a congregate meal site, which is now a community table site, which Aging Well Lincoln in Woonsocket coordinates and provides the meals there, but they serve it, so they only have 1.5 FTEs there. Then we went to Lois Durkin and Lincoln, and they have $50,000 in the budget just for programming alone. Yeah, they have about 9 employees. They're municipal, those two are both municipals. So what we did is we went about and we gathered, as I said, operational budget, staffing, and scope of work. Then we went to Woonsocket Senior Center, which I'm very familiar with, but it's a different setup because it's not a municipal. The building is municipal, but they subcontract to Aging Well Inc. to provide all of the programming there. But, it's a little bit different because they also have a daycare. They coordinate and provide the meals for all of the Meals on Wheels, as well as congregate meals in all of Northern Rhode Island. So it's a little bit different, and they operate with federal grants, which I've written a couple times, and also from donations with the communities that they serve. And they're mostly, I think they have maybe 4 full-time employees. But we figured if we could gather up some information like that, and it could be ready for when we're ready to go. There are a couple more that I'd like us to visit, the senior center, because we meet monthly as well, and we'll probably get to Cumberland and Smithfield. But those are the places, well, actually, some of our folks even go into North Providence, which is the Taj Mahal, if you've ever been there, of senior centers. It's incredibly beautiful and large, and they have a huge operating budget. That's the other thing too. We were able to get the operating budgets for all of the surrounding senior centers, and it's amazing. I think it's not probably $500,000 a year. Yeah. So we've been a little bit busy that way. But all of this information we share with the multi-generational committee too, so it's kind of like.
I was going to say, you want to share
that's
that
what
with,
we've been up to.
you want to share that with us too?
A little bit busy, yeah.
Because I'm sure, as we're looking at buildings and everything, I'm sure, comparing building square footages and the operational budgets that you're looking at would certainly have an impact on what we're looking at to do as well, especially with, employees, staffing, and the like of that sort of thing. So if you want to share that information with us too, that would be really nice.
Yeah, it's gonna cost money. It's gonna
Everything
cost
is.
money, and I think people in town that have to realize it. I spoke to your council.
Well,
It's gonna cost money.
it's going to cost
Yes,
money.
it is gonna cost money, but my whole thing going, the reason I'm into this is we've been, there's not been a lot of money spent on seniors in this town, actually. Is that although now we do get some money to provide the programming that we do, as shelters. But up to this point, what is spent on seniors pales in comparison to what is spent in our schools that these seniors have
Sure.
paid taxes to support, which we still support, by the way.
Yeah.
Many of us are still paying taxes on 2 houses. But anyways, yes, it's gonna cost money.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
But I think as opposed to just saying it's going to cost money, it also needs to be put that we're making an investment. It's not just to spend money, it's because we have money. We want to invest in our community to provide for our community. So, but yeah, it's going to cost money.
Could you speak a little louder?
Sure.
I'm used to, I've got a big voice, but you all are gentlemen, so you.
No, that's fine. So, yeah, investing in our community is certainly what we're aiming to do.
I had a question. Where are we, is the senior group's expectation that their needs can be satisfied by what is going to occur at Scouters Hall with that grant money? Or are we to assume that we need to incorporate some percentage of what they would require in our work? Where are we there?
Well, because you,
That's the million-dollar question. That's what we've been waiting for. And, you know, we do have that $4 million, and I did hear recently, I spoke to both, to Paul, Zonsky, that it was given the okay that that money, the $4 million was, the grant was for a multi-generational with an emphasis, I wrote the support for a senior center, so now I call it a dedicated space, I don't care what you call it. But that's what that $4 million was for. In addition, initially, it was to, Scouters, but in addition on to Scouters to make all of that happen. But they did check, and it could be transferred, because now I'm hearing something that John Beauregard and I thought 2.5 years ago, that the Catholic Gymnatorium in Halliwell would have been an ideal place, but for a million reasons, everybody told me no, and told us no, it was going to cost too much money. So now has that changed?
well, the fact that we are learning tonight of that the $4 million can be applied elsewhere for a dedicated senior space.
Used to buy property.
Perfect, okay. Well, that's not our call. It's gonna be a council decision. Yeah.
That's going to be up to the council.
So that's gonna be their decision whether it gets applied down the street on Main Street or down the street on Victory Highway. We have not done, this group has not done any cost estimating on how much it would be to refurbish Building 10. I would still say we're standing by our initial recommendation to have it demolished because it's just not worth saving.
Well, see,
And-
and this is what we would, that's what we were told initially, and I'm like, because you know, at first, I was all on board, I thought that was huge, that, you know, had a stage, so much could be done there.
Certainly.
The land and everything, but, then, you know, then I heard through the grapevine that your architect said that maybe we could use that building again, you know, for, no, am I wrong?
Our original building assessments heads through Weston and Sampson had recommended that it be demolished.
Demolished,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I remember that, and I
Yep.
was all, you know, and I'm like, we're gonna spend all this money to have something that's gonna, you know, why, you know, yeah, demolish and knock it down. But, so there's no truth to that if it's coming forth that it could be used again, right?
We haven't had that formal discussion, no.
Well, I think you also have to qualify that even if that discussion were held, if such a curveball was thrown and we're trying to develop an overall site, but then we're told to put a specific emphasis on one building and make the rest of the design work around that one building, which happens to be an old building, it kind of goes against the evolution, the normal evolution of a design for that property, especially when you have a building sitting over there that, Scouters Hall, that was intended to receive, to be the beneficiary. Of course, anything can be done, and we are at the mercy of the council. But if you try to force in one design component in an overall and get everything ready for that one building at the compromise of anything else you may be doing long-term, I think it's problematic in a word.
If I may, I've been listening as well as I can. Based on the last meeting, because of the wish list that both groups brought in, the seniors and the scout group, the two of you are already familiar with the scouting. Scouting is not diminishing in numbers, it is growing after COVID. Based on our wish list, as we were leaving and finishing that meeting, it was concluded that what two of
And, you know, one of the things, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you know, from the senior perspective, we explore all options, you know, and even when we were talking about, you know, oh, this addition or whatever at Scottus, the reality is that what's standing there now probably wouldn't withstand any kind of an addition anyways, so we're probably talking about knock the whole thing down and let's start over again. Now, is it gonna fit? You know, because there's wetland, there are so many issues, so you, when we say where are we, who knows? Because there are so many issues there around wetlands and parking and things like that. I mean, ideally, it's in the center of town, and that's really a nice thing, you know?
That was gonna be my question. With this wish list, is the Pacheco site going to be able to fit all of that? Or are you more apt to going down the street where we have,
My wish list was Halliwell to begin with, I think you all know that. That was
So-
fine to begin with, but, you know, it kind of got dashed with all the, expensive remediation that would have had to be, done there. So, whatever, wherever, when people ask me, Linda, what do you think? I explore all options, and I really hope that it gets done in my lifetime, which at first blush, Scouter seemed to be the answer. But then when you dig a little deeper, no, it's not.
So no design work at all?
I don't-
Has any
you haven't
money
put
been
a-
received? No design team has been hired? Nothing has been done?
No, and see, that's what's holding us up, you know, and that's why I said, let's have a meeting. Why? To get together and say, hello, we don't know what's going on. No, we don't have the money to do anything like that. We cannot even explore, you know, an architect or anything like that, because we don't have that fat check in our hand yet, you know? But it's, and, as you said, it's going to be what the council decides, too.
so there hasn't been any formulation of an RFQ to go out to even interview?
We were told at the first meeting that the town did request for an environmental study group to go and evaluate.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either state or federal government. That was at that first meeting in June.
Yeah.
It was a request that had been sent out 60 days prior. So here
But
we
that's
sit
what
in
the,
July
you know,
and it
yeah.
hasn't been done.
Yeah.
We can't do that until they say yes to the footprint. And then an architect, and the architect would go to design according to the wish list.
Yeah, two architects sitting here, but some of that has to be done in reverse. I mean, first thing you have to do is assess what the zoning setbacks, if there are any property line issues with what you have, how much buildability is there, do you need any relief? Then the architects need to say, can we use the structure that's there? Because we all know that it's much cheaper to renovate than to tear down. But, I mean, I don't know, are we supposed to do anything with all this, or we're just, I mean, if this is gonna be thrown onto our laps, I'd rather it be thrown sooner than later.
No, the intent of having Mrs. Tebow and, I'm sorry, Mr. Carden here this evening was just for information sharing. What we know, what they know, what we've put on our wish list, how it correlates with their wish list. Because one thing that I've heard, commercial kitchen, not only has the seniors mentioned that, but Parks and Rec has mentioned that, library has mentioned that. There's been multiple groups that have said commercial kitchen. And then it's also for our architect here to listen as well, and then if there's questions that Joel has, he can certainly ask them as well. But it was more to also find out where along in the process are they? Can we help you out in some way with giving you our RFQ that we put forth and so forth like that,
But
so.
isn't it fundamental to what this committee is doing, if we're gonna do anything related to a structure, as far as base design, isn't it incumbent upon us to say to the council, you have to give us direction? Is the is that grant going to be dealt with on a separate property? Or have you decided that it's better to be assigned to Halliwell? Whatever their wishes are, but I think you need to expedite so that they're not taking down a trail.
$4 million is
No, I understand that. I'm talking location.
Originally, it was, I mean, I helped them write the grant. It was for an addition at Scouters Hall. Addition at Scouters Hall, because of, the expense of Halliwell remediating that cafe gymatorium, that should be demolished or whatever. Anyways, and that's where it was to go. The $4 million is for a multi-generational.
But you're indicating that the federal government has not required that it be at the location that was noted in the grant.
Well, we looked into, we pressed, and the town administrator looked into it. He had a conference call with them. And Paul's here. Hi, Paul. Paul, you speak up then.
Yeah, if the board will allow me.
Yeah, go for it.
There's so many moving parts to this. We all know, a physical operation person would be required to gain ingress and egress out there. Not a big deal, I'm sure that would happen. You folks are probably, being natives, know that behind Scottish Hall is wet. We're very constrained on what we can do over there. So do we get the physical operation committee to come in and do parking over there? At first, it was a great idea, but now as we get into it, as Administrator Tebow said, the more we look at this, the more we realize how constrained this place is. So coming back to Halliwell, I can't speak for the council, but I'm starting to get the feeling that they may be amenable to positioning a multi-generational structure down at Halliwell. Now, Mark Carullo was a phenomenal planner. He's not a surveyor, but he's taken the new DEM regulations of a 200-foot setback, which came about last June, and we're very constrained on what we can do at Halliwell. There's not a lot that can go on over there. So he actually drew it out and he showed it to me the whole board. As the administrator, I will advocate to move it to Halliwell. If we're gonna do a multi-generational, because of ingress, the parking evidence there, we have the underground utilities, it's more of an appropriate situation. Yeah, some people have to get over the fact that it's not in the center of Slatersville anymore. But most of our seniors drive to Lincoln, to Woonsocket, to Cumberland. And if not, if you build it, now grants can be written, as Bobby Monaghan, the assistant planner, has been writing grants, and we're getting transportation money to run buses. So when you have a nice spot, it's more favorable to get more grants. The other piece of this is, I said this to council Monday night, we had the great opportunity to hire a grant writer for 1 month, 30 days. And I won't get into what happened with that situation. This grant writer applied for a $1 million grant to enhance the grounds at Halliwell. Benches, shading, pickleball, whatever we can do. Remember that we've got Davis Bacon prevailing wages and whatnot. So $1 million is not $1 million, as you all know. So that has gone through the Appropriations Committee favorably. Now it's got to go before Senate and Congress. And then, of course, at the end, President Biden has to sign off on it. I got it. But I keep telling everybody it's not a sure thing. It's got to go through Senate and Congress. But the Appropriation Committee, when they say $1 million from North Smithfield, check. Okay, what's the next? What's the $250 million thing over here? Let's look at that, right? So it's moving along. I don't know what else to say. I believe, personally, as the administrator, I think Halliwell would be the place to have a multi-generational location. That's my opinion, right? And I base it on being previous town planner, being involved in the community for 30, how old is my son now? That's when I moved here, right? So, I know you gentlemen, and of course Administrator Tebow, we never thought that we'd get a $4 million grant. Let's put an application up, and Linda was very instrumental. She knew Congressman Cicilline, called him and talked to him, and pretty much did a lot of the background, getting it to be considered. So we spoke to HUD 2 weeks ago. It took us months to get an appointment with them on Zoom, months. We cannot use the money for acquisition, we know that, right? But it doesn't seem to be a very high hurdle to take and reappropriate it to another location in town. We own Halliwell. And it's one of the least kept secrets in town. Council was looking at another commercial
So I'm a little bit concerned about the timing of all of this because we are sort of getting into the meat of a master planning process right now, which as part of, we're making sure that we put aside space for some type of building structure, whether that happens sooner or later, doesn't matter. We're making sure that there's a spot for it, right? But the needs that we're discussing at the site will change depending on the fate of scouters and what's going to happen there, right? So it seems to me like this is something that council has to figure out pretty quickly for your sakes, for our sake, the sake of this planning process. So I don't know what the next steps are.
I think the other question is, you can look at this in a positive light or a negative light if you choose to. The positive light would allow us to build our multi-use building as a priority. The challenge would be we only have 4 million, so you'd have to find the additional monies because 4 million won't do it. And whether or not the government will allow you to park the money while you're doing additional fundraising. So those are fundamental legal questions that council probably doesn't have the answer to, but they should find it out. If we're told that we must use the an existing structure, then I think we need to have some long meetings about that because it seriously impacts. So the very positive part about this, in my opinion, on first blush, is that if this is the impetus to build the 10 or the 20,000 square foot building, which will be the cornerstone of that address, then it is a gift. It's a partial gift because it's money. That would change our focus to concentrate exclusively on getting that building built and bringing the infrastructure to it, which would then lead us to the other tasks. But I think exactly we need to, if this is what's going to come as a consequence of just the reality of the circumstance, then we'd rather know much sooner than later.
For our sakes, and for Joel's sake as well, going through this master planning process, we were formed before the multi-generational committee was formed. We're still here working. From the sounds of it, there hasn't been much traction with whether or not we're getting that $4 million to begin with, or the time.
We do have it.
Oh, okay.
It's a straw thing.
So then, just the timing of getting a design team for your committee, I would say that we take your wish list and start to see how that dovetails into what we're already doing. If it starts to become the desire of the council, the administrator, the folks that are taking our recommendations, why not have us take that wish list, see how it works? Because you're going to do a test fit at Pacheco, see if it fits. We're doing test fitting now. So, because we're only in master planning, so that's test fits. So if we get your wish list, we walked the site earlier this evening with the landscape architect and Joel and his team, and they've already provided some exterior test fits for passive and active recreation that we went through. So the ability to do a test fit with your building program into what they're proposing as a building footprint, it's just a master plan right now. As I've said all along, our master plan is fluid. So we can take this wish list, incorporate it, and then when we get
These restrooms over there, right there.
then when we get to the point where it's a make or break time for the council to make a decision whether scouters and seniors are going at Halliwell or are they going to Pacheco. Well, we have a plan either way.
But I think fundamental to that is a decision that we either would strongly suggest to the council that we don't see the benefit of trying to renovate one building because it's going to change everything that we've conceptually thought of.
Yep.
In my opinion, I would be 100% in favor of, because we always talked about it anyway. If it weren't for the grant, it was going to be there anyway. And then
Yep.
the grant came along, and we took a left turn. So now we're coming back. But I think we need to get the council to define emphatically and crystal clear that if we do this, it's our opinion, my opinion, hopefully it's the committee's opinion, that we want it to be part of a new building, which would then allow us to move forward with our work. If there's the power at be. If they say, no, we need to take care of this, use that building, then so be it, but that's gonna change everything. We don't wanna go down one road to then have them tell us, 3 miles down that you have to get on another path. So maybe we can cut the chase and find out if timing, is there a critical time associated with the money where it must be spent? Can it be used for design purposes if it needs to be? What is the time frame? Because no matter what building is designed, $4 million is not gonna build it.
No.
And it's not gonna take care of bringing everything down to the area so $4 million is gonna be a drop. It's a nice drop, but it's a drop in the bucket.
I think we could do something, again, I want to reiterate what I said earlier, we take care of prevailing wages, take care of self-cost of architecturals. A lot of that stuff, as you know, it's all been surveyed. You guys have those surveys, correct? For Halliwell property? Those all done in the past?
We have a type 1 survey, not the more detailed survey.
So the town has committed money to that location,
Mhm.
and I think it's just, it's gonna evolve. If you're going to, I wanna say if someone is going to look at Scottish Hall, the only place you can go is up. You can't go behind it's wet, you can go a little to the west and maybe pick up a couple of, 20, 30 feet, right? What are you gonna do with parking, what are you gonna do with the existing facilities, it's all gonna have to be revamped. Gentlemen know this better than anybody else. Howell is the ideal location for this. Now, what can we do with $3 million? I think we can do a hell of a lot. We've already approved, abatement, hazardous abatement and demo of all the buildings. They're coming down.
Do you know when that's occurring?
Well, it's supposed to happen in the fall, September, October, right?
Okay.
That's what I've been led to believe.
Okay. I know council had approved the contract, the bid that had gone through a couple months ago.
Yeah, it came in a lot better than what we originally thought it was going to be.
It sure did.
Around $1 million, but it's somewhere hovering around 600, don't hold me to the exact number, 600,000 to abate it, take it all down. But again, the utilities are there, the ingress, the egress, the traffic lights, I mean, it's an ideal location. Now, what can we do with $3 million? That becomes the question. What type of amenities are we gonna put in? I mean, are we gonna, certainly if we want a dance floor, we're gonna use a hardwood floor, maybe. I mean, what are we doing? It's like building a house. Are you gonna use granite countertops, or are you gonna come in with something that's serviceable? It all comes down to the materials. And Jeff, you're an architect. You can help us with this much more than me babbling about potential costs.
Jeff, may I ask the administrator a question?
Go right ahead.
What was the reaction when you said all of this to the council?
You know what, I advocate for this for a long time. I don't know what council's thoughts are. It's a different composition of the council now. They're very, guarded in their remarks.
I know it takes some time to make decisions.
Well, thank you, I was trying to avoid saying that, but that's exactly what
Yeah, but I think the fundamental question, after listening to the administrator's comments, the fundamental question which pops into my head is, to the council is, do you want us to construct a small building within your budget that would then be expanded upon or somehow incorporated into the 20,000 or 10,000? Or do you want to wait and put that money in the bucket and let us continue? So they have to establish the sense of urgency. Are they going to charge us with build the largest building you can build for the 4 or 5 million we're gonna give you, and then make your second building somehow incorporate the first building. I think that's square one, because otherwise we're just
Well,
chasing.
Mr. Jerry, I'm not following you on the second building.
Meaning the landmark, the signature of Halliwell at some point was going to be a multi-use, multi-generational, larger 10 to 15 to 20,000 square foot building. We either design that and the seniors come into it as we had originally planned, but that's a time frame. We haven't even put pen to pencil yet. So that's out here. But if the council says, look, we have this money that was given to us, build a building the biggest you can for the money we gave you, and then when phase 2 comes, when you can build the larger building, have your architects incorporate a design. I would think that that's a fundamental threshold that has to be.
it's
I
a,
was at the charrette that you all had, and I remember seeing all of the designs that were offered by the company that I can't remember the name. But a couple of those designs had a separate senior center, not just a multi-generational center. They had a wellness center, they had a senior center. There are at least 2 designs that I saw, and I said,
Correct.
look at them, they were listening. So not just one big multi-generational.
so there's a couple things that we're discussing though right now. We have a couple different tracks and we don't have direction from council yet. We have our master plan. That's what we're working on right now. That's what we're gonna focus on right now. And the master plan of the property, but also the master plan of the building. We can take the wish list that you guys have put together and put that into the master plan of the building. I've always said in front of council, we can do this in phases. We can build buildings in such a way that we can build them in phases, so that part A and then there's part B. Once you build the both of them are together, they look like they've been built at the same time. They've just been built at separate times though. But they have all the services, all the elevators, all the mechanical, the electrical, all of that's right together. And that's one of the things that this committee has recommended prior, is that everything is in one building, because we don't want separate buildings with all the different services. We see how that worked out over at Halliwell already. So until we can dream of all the different ways that council is going to direct us, but until we have that discussion with them, which I was going to plan to put on, be asked to be put on their agenda for their next council meeting to discuss, but things that are going on as an update in general, but now we have a little bit more of a bigger discussion. At the same time now, we can still master plan and do a schematic design of a building that incorporates the so this committee could still be working on our master plan, while your committee is then working on the schematic design of a building that is down at the property.
And when you decide to be at the meeting, let me know.
Sure.
I will be able to, in my group.
Perfect.
Because we need to, I absolutely agree. The council needs to make a decision. They need to make a decision. Because, I mean, quite frankly, that's why I said I didn't have the last meeting. We're gonna sit around and chat and get nothing accomplished. You know, I'm a busy person, as all of you are. And until we have that direction that
Yep.
we need.
And if we need to, if council isn't ready to answer at that meeting, their next council meeting, then I'm going to simply request that we have a joint meeting with this group, and we could include your group as well. So then that way, we're all asking the questions we want answered, and then at the end of that meeting, we can get some meeting.
Alex is liaison to our committee.
Well, we're down a liaison. We have not been assigned one for a while, so.
So we have one.
All meetings are public. And
Yep.
so if someone would have called for a public meeting with town council, I'm sure that they certainly would cooperate.
Oh, yeah.
The administration, the planning department, whomever we need, as far as the people that I appoint, they will be there. And it's up to town council to, and they will be there. I mean, this is an issue that everybody wants to see happen.
Yeah.
So, well, if you wanted to schedule a meeting, Linda, you're on that committee, council president Allen is on it, Director Pendergast is on it, the gentleman up front with the There are a lot of people that want this to happen, and so let's
Yep.
just schedule a meeting and we can have a public, we can hold it here. Wouldn't it be nice that we were over capacity for a meeting? Wouldn't that be a nice?
Especially for a Halliwell meeting. We've been dying for more than 5 people.
Well, do you remember the Halliwell when it originally started, we were in the throngs of the COVID situation?
Yep.
And I advocated we sit out in lawn chairs outside in the dry parking lot and have our meeting outside in the open. Remember? So we got space, and let's do it before
We'll get
the snow
people that,
flies.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Okay, so I think we'll leave it at that for now. Let's meet with council, we'll set a joint meeting, and then we'll be able to ask our questions, get direction from them. But in the meantime, we're gonna continue as we've been charged and work on our master plan. But certainly, please send along your wish list, so then that way we can share that with Joel, so he can start, at the very least, incorporating it. And then if time, after a little while, if we find that it's feasible at Howell, great. If we find that you've done a test fit and it's gonna be down at Pacheco, then we can lob it off. So, and then that way, Joel has something to work with. We can all discuss it in a collaborative way and get that moving. Because, okay, great. Did you have any questions for our guests? Okay. I know, go right ahead.
I've got something. We have the food pantry at the Congregational Church. Now, we're thinking of making it multi-generational building. The food pantry is the basement. I think for you folks to consider, and we certainly would also, having a food pantry at that multi-generational center.
We talked about this
I know.
before, many moons
I know.
ago, Bob, and I was hoping you would bring that up. I will tell you, food pantry in a space dedicated for seniors, whatever you wanna call it, I call it senior center, is a very smart idea, because you'll have built-in volunteers, just as we have in Woonsocket. Meals on Wheels are there, and almost recently, in Woonsocket, there's a food pantry for pets. So if we can do that for our four-legged furry friends, we can certainly have, just because it's a senior center, a food pantry would fit right in, because you'd have built-in volunteers, and it would be a wonderful thing. I'll put that on my wish list.
And this is way down the road.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's something we're gonna address yet. But we have had discussions with Lon about working with us on a multi-generational center in Halliwell. I'd like you folks to consider, would you want to have a lot there?
Go ahead.
The reason is, the building can be wherever we want. The lot would be there, but the big thing is, the line would operate. We wouldn't have to worry about who's gonna cut the grass, who's gonna be there when the people want to come to the meeting. They operate. So that's just to put that up, way ahead of where we are.
You know, I heard that thought,
Okay.
Bob, and I have to tell you, I was not quite a fan, because, and I'll tell you the cause. First of all, I've worked with the Y, or tried to work with the Y in the past for seniors, and, it was less than a positive outcome, because I tried to see if, could you at least let them go to some of your classes, or this or that. No, they have to be a member. Well, many of the seniors are financially, lacking in the funds to have a membership. And the other thing, when I heard that talk about the Y doing that, I asked the question, so, would they give a discount to North Smithfield residents, since we are the host town? And the answer I heard was no. So I thought, well, gee, this is a nice deal for them.
food pantry should be there, because you're out of space, you don't have space over there.
No, it's up and down the stairs too, it's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah, and so that's the type, that's multi-generational, multi-community type stuff.
Right.
Food pantry, and that was looked upon favorably because of this service. Now tie that into what you gentlemen all know, the garden over there, the fresh produce, all this stuff is just a win-win. That's why it made it through the Senate Appropriations Committee. Again, it's gotta go through Congress and Senate, so I don't wanna say that it's a done deal, but, you know, I don't even wanna say, I just gotta tell everybody that, wait, see what happens.
Sure.
Until we get that check.
No, and that's another thread that has connected community garden, food pantry. Mrs. Lilly and Mrs. Marandola had reported that they had donated so many pounds of produce to the food pantry for use. So, you know,
They also bring it to the senior housing sites in North
Mhm.
Smithfield as well.
so,
And getting back to our furry friends, Madam Administrator, so the town animal, the shelter, Friends of North Smithfield, they do go to assisted living places and bring food for the pets.
Right, and they also bring them cards,
Yeah,
gift
so-
cards,
yep.
yeah, they do. But, you know, the one that's in Woonsocket right now is actual food. The Friends of North Smithfield Animal Shelter didn't want to bring the food because many people with dogs or cats don't like to change their diet. So they give them a gift card.
Yep.
But, you know, but that all fits, you know, that's all in what can happen in a center like that.
perfect.
So we need the council
Yep.
to make a decision
Gotcha.
and give us some direction. Right?
I agree.
Okay. But in the meantime, we're gonna keep working on our master plan. And that is what Joel is here to present to us tonight, so unless anybody has any other questions, comments that we want to talk about with the multi-generational advisory committee members, I'm gonna say we move on to our next agenda item. Nothing? Okay.
Well, something good.
We're good.
So then,
Administrative people, thank you.
Well, no, thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
I'm going home.
That's why I liked it better when I was president of the council, I had a vote.
See ya.
all right, so our
We
next
all
item on the
set?
agenda.
Thank you, Jeff, for inviting us.
Thank you for coming.
Let me know when,
Yes.
you schedule that meeting with the council, okay?
Yeah, I'm gonna go to their next Monday night meeting to ask them when, and I'll email the town
Okay.
clerk and say I'm gonna be
Because
asking for this
I
to
will
schedule.
come, I will be here with you, and I can bring my people. We can fill the room.
Roger, next time you come, wear a name tag, would you please?
My name has not changed, Rick.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Take care, see you later.
You should wear one.
I know I should.
All right, next up on our agenda this evening, discussion, consideration, and action, BH+A, presentation, and then, we also have our observations from our site walk as well. So I'll hand that over to you. Yeah, we are having technical difficulties, but for the folks at home watching on YouTube, we are able to
Thank
project
you, Joe.
what we're gonna be talking about.
This is really an effort to just get some of what we've heard today on paper, so it's not, just because you see some stuff on paper, doesn't mean it's all encompassing, it's just that so far we've heard from the athletic groups, and so we put the athletic group information on the site to see how it would look, and we'll add on, so as this gets around town, it's just important that everybody knows this is step one, and we're just putting the information as step one on the site plans. So we have the existing site conditions, we did the site walkthrough, and we sort of talked about the different zones of the site. Our landscape architecture firm had done, we had met and walked the site right after the last meeting that we had, and then we set up the site briefing because I wanted to be able to come to this meeting with more than a wish list, but sort of see how big the site is.
Yeah, I believe the town planner had put that together, so I'll reach out to him and get that information.
So these site options A, B, and C just take what we learned from the last meeting and put that on just for scale. So it doesn't encompass things like passive recreation, it doesn't yet encompass the pickleball idea or bocce or outdoor musical events or an outdoor pavilion, because we hadn't really gotten to those discussion points. But I thought it was important to put the fields on just to see, A, how big the fields get to be and how much land is left over. The other thing is I wanted to get on this site a footprint for where a building can go that made sense. And I'm sort of gonna go backwards on this presentation if I could. Sort of take you to, the idea was, could we create a modular building? And this fits into the conversation we were just having. Let's say, let me take you to the next page. Let's say you start with the senior center, multi-generational building. It's got a multi-purpose room, it's got bathrooms, it has a commercial kitchen, and it has administrative space for whatever. I was thinking there might be recreation and senior center down there that would give you a footprint on the site that was relatively small, but it would be a 12-month of the year footprint that would sort of create a density on the site, but be one type of a module that could go on. Another module that could go on would be a gym. I could build a 1-court gym, I could build a 2-court gym. That gym could have a walking track around the top of it for winter walking, and that gym could have its own entry. So what this is showing then is you could take those two modules together and you could plug that into the gym, whether it's a 1-court gym or a 2-court gym. You could, in other words, you can think of your building as incremental. I don't know what's first, recreation or senior. It sounds like seniors is first, but you could think of this building as being pieces that go together. And what I was explaining on the site is when you have soccer fields and baseball fields, it's nice to have concessions, it's nice to have bathrooms. But when you just have that bathroom as a standalone building in the middle of the fields, are not conditioned in the winter, they tend to get vandalized, they tend to not get used. If your bathrooms that support the fields could be part of this senior center, multi-generational facility,
Right.
just like the woman tonight came in to use the restroom here for the concert, you get that synergy and they're clean and they're nice and they're well-maintained and there's a makes some sense. So what I keep thinking is, as I hear this discussion, is it makes some sense to ask council for direction, but it probably also makes sense to give council some guidance as to what might. You've thought about it for a long time, they haven't. So to ask them for direction without giving them some options seems to me that it's gonna be hard for them to give you the nuanced direction that you might get from Mrs. Tebow and your findings that might help them say, well, yeah, the kernel of an idea would be to put a multi-generational, multi-purpose room, some dedicated senior space, maybe some scout space too, and I think she's right on. You know, you're not gonna share all the scout and senior center space, so it's a pretty different kind of uses, but they may share that multi-purpose room, or if there was a gym, gyms can be very inexpensive, they can share the gym as well. So I was just trying to have a conversation of thinking of the project as a more modular approach and
I mean, I love the modular approach, except when you introduce the reality of trying to get the inertia going each time.
No, sure.
But I think one very positive here, which we should leverage, is that if we give guidance and recommendations to the council, once the town makes an investment, a physical investment in the property, it should in theory be easier to then mobilize the support to make the addition, do the outdoor activities, because people would have already in their mind accepted the premise that, oh, this is now going to be our signature place where each generation, each part of the town population has a place, whether it's young, old, or in the middle. So this actually could be a fantastic opportunity to get the ball rolling faster than it ever would, because we have some money. And yeah, if we can design something that, I don't see how, but maybe we can design something that has some integrity, that we can meet some of their needs for the budget, and/or 3 or 4 million more, where you can then reach out to the community and say, okay, why don't you match? You know, we got this much from our grant writing, and now we need the public to say, we wanted enough that we're gonna give you some additionals, however that's done. Or you float a bond, meaning do it that way.
So, you have to excuse, I was trying to advance the idea, and I made a bunch of assumptions. Oddly enough, some of the assumptions I made were sort of commercial kitchen and multipurpose room, and but that's because,
I really wish I had you go before they spoke, because I think that would have, like, okay, yep, done deal.
it's such a commercial kitchen is such a fundamental component, not only of the senior center, but if the scouts use it. And then you have an emergency shelter when power goes out, you have a generator, and in a summer like this, when you have a heat emergency, you could also have a shelter. In the winter, when you have a heating, there's some, the commercial kitchen serves a lot of needs in the community. In Massachusetts, there's all sorts of communities that are doing these, because of climate change, these warming and cooling shelters, and the commercial kitchen's sort of fundamental to that.
Well, I like the fact that it's such a, your initial presentation gives us all these initial variables that we can, and ironically, they may come to play much sooner. In the modular approach, we may be forced into it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, it's just,
I was thinking the modular might be different, because building a very simple, multi-purpose room like a gym is pretty inexpensive. And then you can build your bathroom and your concession stand, and it ties into other athletic fields. But tonight, maybe change that. My preconception was, maybe there's a simpler, basic building that's, gets the seniors started. And I think that it would be really great if somebody could have a little bit more information, because it does sound like they're feeling that the scout hut you're putting a square peg in a round hole over there.
well, then the only advantage is that building would remain and be used for whatever its next best purpose would be.
Like the scouts probably.
I think probably stay with the scouts, just pick
And
strictly the
so
scouts.
that revert back to.
Yeah, exactly, go right back to the scouts. That'd be plenty big for the scouting alone.
I think they'd be happy, just the status quo.
They'd be happy
Maybe
if that
some
was
nice
the case.
repairs.
But then the other, just before I forget my train of thought, the indoor gym complements the outdoor courts. Because then that
Sure.
would give the athletic department
Yep.
the ability to run an all-winter
Yep.
basketball, volleyball.
Yep.
And you could even, again, rent that. if
Yeah,
it's- if
and
it works.
it's great for seniors, it's great for families, and that, I don't wanna spend money that maybe not again, but that we're finding that more and
Yeah.
council meeting that might be a little more helpful for them to not just say,
Yeah, I was actually going to say, could you send this presentation to me so we could show what's you guys have been up to as not only an update but a point of discussion as well. But if you think you can have some updated graphics for us, that would be fantastic.
I have it on a thumb drive if you want, I can give it to you now, and then what I think that
Thank you.
sometimes happens is that the master plan itself can be informative.
Mm.
That as soon as you get in these meetings and you get a drawing, new things develop. So I thought we had 2 meetings and there was a lot of discussion, and if we had a 3rd meeting and I didn't have anything to show you, it would be frustrating. And I think it's good to have something to look at because it maybe helps to
Yeah.
focus ideas.
I just want to say that the stuff that you shared earlier on site and these are really, really helpful. And it's like you foresaw the conversation tonight with the modular plan here, because this is sort of, like you said, this is gonna, I think, inform the town and what we might do and help them to wrap their heads around a direction for us, so really, really helpful.
We haven't really spent a lot of money, so we can be efficient and push these ideas forward to save the whatever fee. I mean, if we can be more efficient and not use the whole fee, that would be helpful for the next phase. Or we get the ideas cemented, and then we use the fee to civil engineering and,
Right.
and better cost estimates and that to advance this idea and help council make a decision.
Sure. No, I mean, off the bat, just looking through these floor plans, I think this is a really good start for us. It's starting to, give us an idea of how things are laying out. Obviously, after this evening's conversation, which areas might take priority and which, areas might grow and shrink and push and pull. But, this option 1 that in the option 1, first floor and second floor, really encompasses quite a bit of what we've done our research for in building program. So I'm really pleased to see that, so thank you and your team for doing that.
We took sort of what was in the previous materials.
Yep. And then Joel, did you just want to run through the site plans, go back to the site plans and just, give a brief description of those? I know we talked about it on site, but
I need to get closer.
that's fine.
Couldn't see if they were advancing or not.
So, so,
Option 1, really the option A, B, C, and D are just tile saying. Option 1 has 1 ball field and 1 softball field. So the difference then was, these are a little bit harder to see, but the difference was the next one had 2 of the fields in it, and it just showed that if we want to get more fields in, the site's really quite big, but when you take the wetlands into account,
hmm,
as the town administrator pointed out, there's less land available than you might think. But what I think that came out of the meetings and what came out of our initial meeting is, if you think about the site, there's the upper level that has the school on it, there's the lower level that has the community gardens.
Yeah.
And I think that we're sort of beginning to think about that site area as one area is active recreation that has sort of the fields on it and the building on it, and then the lower area might be more passive or cultural space, so they could have a music, it could have a pavilion, it could have a most cross-country events, the parents can't see what's going on, but here, you get all these different vistas across the site that you would see the kids racing first by the oak tree, then they go around the backside, and then they're up by the cul-de-sac, and they're up at, you know, they have a circuit that makes that type of thing interesting. And I think if you add, it's not a be-all and end-all, but the idea was, okay, now we have pickleball, we had bocce, you have a lot of ingredients, and now the site becomes more.
That's why I liked, when I looked at all of it on the drawing and then reflecting from the site walk, to me, C, I like the most, in part because it takes the basketball court and moves it closest to the facility.
Yeah.
And it just seemed that that's usually a nighttime activity, and you'd rather they be, in my opinion, closer. And the flat football / soccer field, that can be offset in the rear, which it is in D. And then, in my mind, the beauty of it was just your last comment. The location of the community gardens can be modified and adjusted. And I think it's going to be wonderful if, when we combine the two concepts, the outdoor, non-athletic use for community purposes around the tree. And that's why I'm thinking that the third field, I think we just almost show as an alternate, as a function of cost. And then I'm almost of the mind that we can show two fields, ball fields, and then whether they are defined as softball, one baseball, or two softball, would be a function of whatever our community decides they want more of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like C, and it's a really good starting point. Oh, they all are, but C is the one I gravitate towards.
Well, I think you're saying two ball fields instead of, so it's either two softball or one softball, one.
Correct, yeah. That would be the premise from what we all gathered. And we know from what we already said that the Pacheco Field has sufficient baseball capacity. And softball's always kind of been, the proverbial, third cousin, second sister. So this would give them a signature address.
I think when we get to somehow we have to flesh out some of the other programs. There might be the community meeting that we're planning later. But what Kyle was talking about on the site walk, in Sandwich, we have a community senior, but next to it is a skateboard BMX. It's used from 8 in the morning till 10 at night. It's lit, and now we're adding a bathroom because it's so popular. And there's pickleball courts. So some of the new, Kyle mentioned water, spray park. I know you have one in Cranston. Those are popular, but they need maintenance. But the pickleball is pretty inexpensive to put in, hugely popular. But the skateboard is, I don't know how popular that is here, but down there it gets a different group of people into the park.
Didn't we have one at Pacheco?
We had a skate park at Pacheco, and then that's been turned into more parking.
Was that because we didn't like the clientele, or what was
I think a
the
combination.
politics of that?
I don't recall, but I think lack of use, bringing in some rabble-rousers, if you will, that, as Joel pointed out, with these concession stands get graffitied. So I think it was kind of a mix of everything. And then maintenance, because I think most of those skateboard ramps were wood and they weren't concrete or anything like that.
Yeah, they get beat up.
So they got beat up pretty badly, and tried and true to North Smithfield, maintenance might not have been first priority of it.
Well, I'm not advocating for it. I'm saying there's some other programs that we might need to think about, because I think the success of it as a master plan is going to be having enough ingredients that attract different
Yes.
folks in the community. So it's not just we're taking Halliwell and accommodating those football, softball, that serve the community, but
I would say, I think I agree with Bob about one aspect of Plan C that I like is the basketball area near at least the parking lot and the community center would be, because people, whether it's pickleball, tennis courts, basketball courts, you're gonna need facilities nearby. If Northman Hoops is using the basketball courts, they're gonna want facilities nearby. If you put pickleball, it's gonna be a lot of the older population will be playing. I know from experience, people have requested bathrooms be open at our pickleball courts. We've accommodated, so that's one aspect, is bathrooms within a decent walking area, to those kind of drop-in, first come, first serve kind of facilities. And parking is right there, because if you put pickleball there, you're gonna have a lot of people coming.
Yep.
30, 40, they'll come from other communities. You build nice enough courts for basketball or tennis, they'll come and play on those as well. So parking near there is key as well. Baseball and softball fields, you can have a little bit of a walk. I think parents and players would expect a little bit of a walk, but the population that would use those kind of drop-in courts definitely need accommodations of parking and bathrooms closer. So that's, Plan C is a good design right there that I think we can tweak, but we can also see what the public has to say.
I guess I'll also note for the committee that we do have a booth at this year's Pumpkin Fest. So that'll be a good chance for us to take whatever BH+A has put together for us at that point, share it with the public, and start a discussion with them about it.
Deja vu.
Well, you know, on the first page of this, you know, we do have our community charrette July, August. So we can certainly talk about when we think that might be best scheduled. If we feel like a Saturday morning will work best. I know that's when we did it the last time. If we want to do it on, let's see, school starts on the 30th of August. And then we typically meet on the 3rd and we'll meet on the 3rd and the 17th. One of those meetings will likely be a joint meeting with the council, because I'd want them to have that joint meeting dedicated for what we're talking about, not have it be one of their regular meetings.
I guess, Joel, how much further do you feel like you need to get before we have a charrette? Like, this is a good start. Is this something you feel like you could put in front of people?
I'd like to have a little more diversity on the plan, just so people aren't saying, oh, it's all recreation.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're close.
So we look at like mid-August for a charrette?
Yeah, and I'd like to get her, Mrs. Tebow's wish list.
Yep.
Just to have that.
So what's the thought? Do we want to have our first charrette on a Saturday morning? Do we want to have it on a Thursday night during one of our regular meetings? Do we want to have it at a completely different time?
Well, should we ask the question of ourselves, what, since we've done it before,
Mm-hmm.
what is the real objective? I'm not speaking against it, but what is the objective this time? To present A through D, and again, get a bunch of comments, and then put the criteria together and say A wins or B wins? Well, what do we hope to get beyond what we already have?
Well, it would certainly be to solicit feedback from the public, get some further direction and buy-in from all interested parties, and then that we take that feedback and use that as further direction for Joel to move forward with and start, getting a little bit more detailed.
But, so is that to say we're gonna have 4 easels, if you will, and say vote for A, B, C, or D for the plan view of the property? And then also have a couple poster boards showing the different phases of the building? I mean, for informational purposes, it's good. But to stand there and talk to Joe about whether or not room number 3 should be 200 square feet or 400, well, that's what I mean. Where do we want to be? Do we just want to show them and say, okay, this is what the modular number 1 would look like, some general offices, the necessary bathrooms. But how are we gonna tally? Are we gonna just, you check off your list and say, I like design scheme A, and then we just report to the council and say, 45% said A was the best, and we either say B is the best or A is the best because we agree with them. I'm just curious as to what we want to get from this.
Is it possible to kind of drill down a little bit further with people and say, okay, there's a plan that includes a track within the gym, is that something people would be in favor of, in support of? There is, a fitness room, dedicated fitness room, is that something people would be in support of? I think there's certain things that probably a lot of people would be in support of, but as you start to get into other aspects, would we need a track? I think it would be great for indoors. I think the seniors would love it, to be able to use it, especially in the colder, but is that something people would support? I think those kind of questions would be, maybe things that we could get a little bit of more of a definitive answer on.
Well, that's what I mean. So if we have all the information on the placards, so they can see all the preliminary design work, but then specifically say, answer this question, just like you said.
Right.
Cost aside, because we can't have that conversation because it's circular. I mean, of course.
Right.
Do you want a track? Well, how do you rate a track? 10, 7, 5. So we probably have to spend more time on the preparation.
Well, I was gonna
I don't
say,
know.
Joel, how would you typically handle your first public charrette? What would you be looking to get out of it as far as direction goes and feedback?
I think that if, it's hard to, lots of times people will say this is my first priority until you get down to the budget and things change. I think that we're sort of advancing far enough that it might be worth just putting our foot in the water and saying, we've taken everything that's Weston and Sampson has done, we've taken what we have here, and here's some ideas, 1 or 2 master plans for the site, and we want to present that and see what the reaction is, because I think that you don't want to go so far backwards that people think we're just doing the same thing that was done a year
Right.
ago with Weston and Sampson's report, that we want to sort of advance the idea and bring into reality that there may be this money available to jumpstart the project, and what does that actually look like? And give people something a little bit more tangible, like this is a real scheme that we think of, and as was mentioned, we drill down into what the components are within that, but I think we're beginning to see the genesis of a master plan. Might be most useful to put that out and see how people react.
Okay.
And I think to get a sense from people, if these are the options we're looking at, what might be the priorities for them. Is a building, is, additional athletic fields, is it basketball courts, whatever. But just remember, the last charrette we did was 2 years ago. It was highly conceptual. We had almost nothing to show at the time, and it was just, what things do you want to see there, right? So now we've done a lot of work. We've done surveys we know where the wetlands are. We have a sense of what can go there, and we're at a point where we're putting things to paper and saying, this is what makes sense to go there based on what we've heard the town needs, what the site can accommodate. What do you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Do we need to know whether the council is agreeable to this going to Halliwell and not Scouters? Do we need to know that before we have the charrette? That's my question.
I don't think so. Because we're gonna be doing a master plan regardless.
Only because if there's confusion, well, I thought the senior center and all this activity was gonna go to Scouters, and why are you showing this kind of activity down here at Halliwell? Do we need to have a commitment on the council before we have the charrette, so that everybody's on the same page?
I don't think that would hurt. I think it would only benefit if we had
Well, I
more
think it would.
clarity.
My point is that people are gonna be confused.
Yeah,
Well, what are you doing this for if the council hasn't even supported it yet? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the more clarity, the better.
I think we need clarity,
Okay.
personally.
that's a good point.
So then before we schedule our charrette then,
Yeah, we need to tell the council.
let's get some further
But that's why I was thinking that, you can suggest to the council that there's some support for, and it makes some sense to
Mhm.
consider Halliwell for the
Yeah.
senior component.
Well, in that, then, that's a question that I wanted to pose to this committee. Are we amenable to hosting the multi-generational things that were mentioned to go down at Pacheco over at Halliwell? Are we on board for that?
Original plan.
I think
I know.
I mean, I think our obligation is to respond to the needs of the people, and if the circumstances are such that the money is better spent at Halliwell, then that's our responsibility to say yes. And the silver lining is that it gives us the priming of the pump that is critical to get real money engaged in what we're trying to do. It's a bit of a gift horse if we handle it the right way.
And then we'll be there with the other committee supporting the charrette, and everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, this
Okay.
is
Then
still,
Linda Tebow's there, poor Roger, if we remember his name, will be there, and that'll be good.
no, again, as I've said at multiple committee meetings, this is very much a collaborative effort.
Yep.
And we want to make sure and keep that collaboration going. So, okay,
And to Mr. Zalinski's
You know,
comment
you know,
today, it sounds like we might have $1 million in the pipeline to facilitate some of the outdoor work at Halliwell.
Yeah.
So it's good to think about how we might prioritize that as well.
I just I have to be home at 9:30.
no, that's fine, by all means.
Please go.
I'd like to be by 9:32.
No, thank you very much, Joel, for your
Thank you, Joel.
time, I appreciate it.
It's all great
This,
stuff.
yes,
Thank you.
thank you for your,
You
thank you and your
are
team.
outstanding, thank
Yep.
you. Really appreciate what you're doing for us.
This is great,
Thank you.
Good.
Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Take care.
okay. Just a little housekeeping for folks that know, I did receive a resignation letter from Frank Halliwell this afternoon, so he's resigned from the committee.
Did he give a reason?
He'll be coaching his daughter's sports teams, and it conflicts with Thursday night practices, so he wanted to make sure whoever's on the board this committee was getting their full attention, so he sends his best wishes, but we hope to hear from him in the future, but now there are 2 open seats, so for anybody listening out in public on YouTube, please feel free to go to the town website and fill out an application to join. If there's 2, and then the council liaison seat.
Well, in speaking, when we do meet with the council, we should take the public opportunity to make mention of the fact that if we're going to be considered, if we are considered to be a significant committee whose work is of import, and it is incumbent upon the council to give
Well,
us that deference and give us a liaison.
Well, they got a liaison, if they join us, if Linda and that group joins us, we'll have a liaison. I can
Well,
see
they're
this
not joining
combining.
us in the sense
Well, I
that
gotta,
they're kind
well,
of supplemental to
okay,
us.
well, we're gonna be
So-
working very closely together.
So I'm going to propose that to the town council that we look to have our joint meeting on August 17th. That would be our second meeting in August. I want to make sure we have a full committee for that. Will that work for everybody?
Yep. I leave that Saturday for the Cape, so I'll be here.
August 17th.
17th. It's open for me.
All right, block it off in your calendars, if you would be so kind.
Gotcha.
I'll pose that as to the date to the town clerk, see if, I think that's far enough, well in advance to get a joint meeting with the full council. And I'll also keep Linda informed of that meeting as well, to get her crew. over for that, so I'm hoping that will be
And
enough.
what do we need to do prior to that?
Well, I'm gonna, obviously bring up this $4 million grant and say, you know, we're looking for direction. And because we've started incorporating those things already, we would make the recommendation that we continue to work collaboratively with the multi-generational committee and move this forward at the Halliwell property.
No, I meant, do we need to have a meeting prior to,
Well, we would have our meeting on the 3rd.
or the 3rd?
Yep. So we would, you know, game plan for that.
And Joel had mentioned taking what he shared today and expanding it with some
Yep.
different programming options too. So
Yep.
that would be good to review at the next meeting if it's available, and then
Right.
prepare to show that to council.
And,
Yep.
you know, before, one thing I think we should, was the joint meeting the 17th, or it's after that?
17th.
Oh, so the 3rd is our meeting to prep, but I really think that we should give serious consideration to going into the 17th meeting with a unanimous vote, if members are of the same mind, that we're actively encouraging the town council to move the senior center grant and everything to the Halliwell site.
Absolutely.
And give us the charge to then develop plans to either make a building to fit that amount or as close as possible, but get past square one. So instead of asking, we should say that we are ready, willing, and we ask you to do this so that it moves forward.
And you're gonna show them the stuff that Joel's got, here's what we're thinking about doing.
Because you've kicked the bucket now for what,
Exactly.
8 months?
Yeah.
Or 4 months? When did this thing start? At least 4 months ago. So I think if we go to them with a vote that says, yes, we are asking you, we're not just suggesting.
I think we can put that on the agenda for the 3rd to
Yep.
make a formal recommendation or
Right.
something.
Yeah.
Very good, Chris. You're on
Thank you.
top of, you're still awake, I'm impressed, I'm impressed.
Well, that's because he skipped the sun. He
That's
wasn't in the
true,
sun.
that's true.
We
No,
had
Scott's got the same.
Scott
Oh, no, you
skipped
were
this,
there.
he was there, he was there.
I skipped through.
Can I just ask one question?
That's fine.
I was surprised at Linda Tebow. Did the Y tell us that they weren't gonna give any discounts to us?
I was too.
I didn't remember that at all.
I got the impression that they were ready and willing to
Yeah,
work with us.
so did I don't know where that came from.
But I also got the
I wasn't gonna argue
impression
with it, 'cause I
they
didn't,
have to run every program.
right.
We could run our
Yeah,
programs and they could run.
I wasn't gonna get involved because it's way ahead, it's down the road, so I
We'll
didn't pursue it.
review the tape.
Yeah, go to the.
No, I mean, I was surprised at that. I said, where the hell did that come from? And then Paul said, oh, yeah, I wasn't impressed. I'm saying, what the hell, what meeting were you guys at? Because I didn't remember that.
Okay.
Anyway, huh? It was ours. We were there. They were there. Yeah.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Item number 6.
Yeah, does anybody want to go for agenda item number 6? It sure
Ah,
is.
so moved.
All right.
Very good. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.